So, this is lecture 25, first sem Maths Unit 2, Tungal School of Basic and Applied Sciences, Degree College, Jamkandi. I am Ramanjan sir, Department of Mathematics. So, let us see the theorem 2, which are all the properties of continuous functions. Next, second theorem, that is theorem 2. If a function f of x is continuous, f of x is continuous in closed interval a comma b, then f of x attains its bounds at least once in closed interval a comma b. See that the statement here. If a function f of x is continuous in closed interval a comma b, suppose, then the function is continuous means the function is continuously moving, then f of x attains its bounds at least once. So, as the function is continuous, automatically the function is bounded. It proved in the previous theorem. So, whenever it is bounded, it must have the lower bound, least upper bound and the greatest lower bound. So, least upper bound is called supremum and greatest lower bound is called infimum, so that it reaches the both least upper bound and the greatest lower bound. Or sometimes the theorem can be asked like this: if a function f of x is continuous in closed interval a comma b, then f of x attains its supremum, this is called LUB, and infimum GLB. In closed interval a comma b. So, LUB is least upper bound, GLB is greatest lower bound, right. Let us see that f of x attains its supremum and infimum in closed interval a comma b. Next proof. Let f of x is continuous, in closed interval a comma b. This implies f of x is bounded. f of x is bounded in closed interval a comma b. So, whenever f of x is bounded, it must have the upper bound and lower bound. So, by completing this axiom, there exists supremum and infimum, of f of x in closed interval a comma b, since by completeness axiom, so it was defined previously also. Next. So whenever both L is supremum and infimum of f of x, let us say that suppose this is also, when we take the real number line, this is closed interval a comma b, and the function is to be continuous f of x, and this may be some small m, and this is to be capital M. So f of x is moving through the m, so that is some f of c is equal to, if you take c and this is d, f of c is equal to small m, and here is f of d, sorry, this is f of d is equal to capital M, like that. So infimum is there and this is c, infimum is there, supremum is there. That supremum can be taken, let capital M be the supremum, M be the supremum of f of x in closed interval a comma b. That is, whenever it is the supremum, it should be the upper bound almost. Sometimes if you are extending this, so f of x is less than or equal to m, comma, for all x belongs to closed interval a comma b. Right. Whenever we take m be the supremum of f of x in closed interval a comma b, f of x is less than or equal to m, maybe is equal to m, that f of x function is less than m. Whenever f of x is equal to m, that f of x attains its supremum. So if possible, assume that f of x does not attain its supremum. So automatically f of x is not equal to m. Then only it should be f of x is less than m. So this implies m is greater than f of x. That implies m minus f of x is greater than 0. This implies 1 by m minus f of x is greater than 0, comma, for all x belongs to closed interval a comma b. Why? Because here is 2, e is greater than 0. Suppose 1 by 2 automatically greater than 0. Right. Since m is a constant function, m is constant function, comma, it is, or then it is continuous in closed interval a comma b, because every constant function is continuous. And since f of x is continuous, and since f of x is continuous, that they are given in the theorem also, in closed interval a comma b, then m minus f of x, the difference of two continuous functions, is continuous in closed interval a comma b. M is a constant function and f of x is also continuous. M is a constant function, then it is continuous in closed interval a comma b, and f of x is continuous function, then the difference m minus f of x is also continuous in closed interval a comma b, and its reciprocal 1 by m minus f of x, that is f of x by g of x, like that, is also, its reciprocal function is also continuous in closed interval a comma b. So whenever that 1 by m minus f of x is continuous, then it is bounded, or and it is bounded by the theorem 1 in closed interval a comma b. So whenever it is bounded, there exists a positive integer, there exists a positive integer k belongs to R, such that 1 by m minus f of x is less than or equal to k, comma, for all x belongs to closed interval a comma b. This implies m minus f of x reciprocal is greater than or equal to 1 by k. This implies m minus 1 by k is greater than or equal to f of x. This implies f of x is less than or equal to m minus 1 by k, comma, for all x belongs to close interval a comma b, which is a simply m minus 1 by k is an upper bound of f of x in close interval a comma b. So whenever the right side is less than or equal to z, the right side is an upper bound, which is a contradiction. Why it is a contradiction? Because m is the supremum of f of x in close interval a comma b. So as m is the supremum in this, it is the upper bound, and any element more than are also the upper bounds. Any element less than m is not upper bound. So this is the supremum. Automatically elements greater than m are the upper bounds, whereas m minus f of x is m minus 1 by k. m minus 1 by k is not an upper bound because it is less than m. Any element less than m cannot be the upper bounds. So that it is a contradiction. That is our assumption that f of x is not equal to m is wrong. Thus f of x is equal to m, comma, for all x belongs to close interval a comma b. So that f of x is equal to m for all x belongs to close interval a comma b, even for some alpha belongs to close interval a comma b, suppose, because this is the constant function. That implies there exists some alpha belongs to close interval a comma b such that f of alpha is equal to m. f of alpha is equal to m for some value of x belongs to close interval a comma b, then that functional value f of alpha is equal to m. Similarly, that is f of x attains its supremum in close interval a comma b. Similarly, there exists some beta belongs to close interval a comma b such that f of beta is equal to small m. That is, f of x attains its infimum in close interval a comma b. So from these two, therefore f of x attains its supremum and infimum at least once in close interval a comma b. So this is the theorem that f of x attains its supremum and infimum at least once in closed interval a comma b. Right, theorem 3. Theorem 3. Theorem 3. If f of x is continuous in closed interval a comma b at c, then there exists delta greater than 0 such that f of x keeps the same sign as f of c, comma, for all x belongs to open interval c minus delta comma c plus delta. So whenever the f of x function is continuous in closed interval a comma b at c, then suppose this is closed interval a comma b and this is the c point, so the function is continuous at c means f of c, so that f of x function keeps the same sign as f of c means, suppose f of c is to be less than 0, f of x also to be less than 0. F of x is to be greater than 0, then automatically f of x also to be greater than 0. See that now it has the same signs. Next proof. Let f of x is continuous in closed interval a comma b at c, then alternate definition of continuous. For each epsilon greater than 0, comma, there exists delta greater than 0 such that mod f of x minus f of c is less than epsilon for mod x minus c is less than delta. This is the alternate definition of continuous at some point c. So this implies f of c minus epsilon is less than f of x is less than the positive f of c plus epsilon, comma, for all or for c minus delta is less than x is less than c plus delta for this modulus. Next, so take this as sum 1. Next, case 1. Let f of c is greater than 0. So we will prove that f of x is also to be greater than 0. That is, f of x is to be positive. Next, take epsilon smaller than epsilon greater than 0, smaller than f of x in 1. So then 1 implies f of c minus epsilon and f of c in this equation, f of c plus epsilon, because epsilon means a smaller value, automatically this is positive, this also to be positive. That implies 1 minus the f of c minus epsilon and the f of c plus epsilon are both positive quantities, Since f of x lies between f of c minus between two positive quantities, f of c minus epsilon and f of c plus epsilon, then f of x is positive. This implies f of x is greater than 0, comma, for all x belongs to close interval a comma b, or x belongs to, that one also we are taking the interval, open interval c minus delta comma c plus delta. So this implies f of x has the same sign as f of c, because f of c is greater than 0, then f of x is also greater than 0. So take this as second condition. Next, now case 2. Let f of c is less than 0. That implies minus f of c is greater than 0. So whether it is really f of c minus f of c is greater than 0, right? Because f of c is less than 0 means minus 2. So minus of minus 2 must be plus 2. It should be greater than 0. So now take epsilon greater than 0, epsilon value greater than, always epsilon value should be epsilon greater than 0. So now we are taking that epsilon value greater than minus f of c. Then f of c minus epsilon and f of c plus epsilon are both negative quantities. Since f of x lies between the two negative quantities f of c minus epsilon and f of c plus epsilon, then f of x is negative. F of x is negative. That is, f of x is less than 0, comma, for all x belongs to open interval c minus delta comma c plus delta. This implies f of x keeps the same sign as f of c. Take this as equation 3. From 2, 3, f of x keeps the same sign as f of c, comma, for all x belongs to open interval c minus delta comma c plus delta. See that now that function keeps the same sign as f of c when x belongs to open interval c minus delta comma c plus delta. So the theorem is true, as function keeps the same sign as f of c. So thank you very much. So be prepared these two properties. Thank you very much.